All right, so now let's get back to our drop-down menu and our unit converter and finally apply state there, because now you learned what state is all about, and now we can use state and the remember keyword and we can apply that to our application. So what are the values that we need to get? So we need to know the input value, so whatever the user has input, and underneath here you can see we need the output value. We need to have a value for the unit, so we need to know what the input unit is, and we need to know what the output unit is, so this one here. So these are 4 states that we need already. Then we need to know the multiplier of what we need to use, so basically the conversion rate, you could say. And finally we need to know of whether the input is expanded, so basically this user interface is expanded, or if it's not expanded. And then we need to have the same for this drop-down menu. So for both drop-down menus, we need to also know their state. We need to know whether they're open or not open, so expanded or not expanded. So all of these things we need to set up as variables inside of our application. So therefore, let's go ahead and set up all of the variables that we're going to need. So all of the different states that we will need. So we will need, as I said, the input value by remember, and then in brackets mutable state of, and then we're going to use a string. So here we need to import remember. There we are, and we need to also import state get value and import mutable state set value. Okay, so we now have imported a few things here. So get value, mutable state of, set value, and remember. So all of these runtime namespaces have been added, or libraries have been added. So we're inside of our unit converter function. And by the way, this should now be a var because we now can actually directly change it. So we don't have this treasure chest surrounding it anymore. We are directly accessing the coins. So we need to make sure that we are using var here instead of val, because otherwise we would only be able to assign it once. So now let's go ahead and set up our other variables that we will need. So we need the input value. We need the output value, so output value, and I'm just going to copy this by remember. We're going to adjust it just a tiny bit each time. Then we will need the input unit, so we need to know of which the unit it should be in the end, and by default I'm going to use centimeters. Then we're going to need the output unit, and this one should by default be meters. Very simple. And then we have a I expanded, so var I expanded. What this variable should contain is a false or true value. By default, I'm going to set that to true false, and that is going to be our drop-down menu. So should our drop-down menu be open or should it be closed is basically what I'm saying here. So yeah, it's loading, so I can't show you the drop-down menu. There we are. So you see, by default, this should be closed. It should not be open. That's what I want to achieve. And that's what this I expanded will do. And then var O expanded, which will be the output expanded. So I expanded is the input expanded, so basically the input button. And this will also be false by default. So it will be unexpanded, which means it will be collapsed, so closed. So no further selection option opened at the same time. And then I'm going to also set up a conversion factor. Conversion factor, which will be remember mutable state of. So here we're not using by, here I'm using directly assigning it, and it should be of type 0 or of type double. Okay, this should be basically the multiplier, so our conversion factor. Should we multiply by 100 or divide by 100, because 1 centimeter is 100th of a meter? Okay, so that's basically what this conversion factor will help us with. Okay. So let's use just one of them in this video, and then in the next one we're going to set up all of the others. So the one that I want to modify is going to be this outlined text field, because you recall that we had this outline text field, but it never actually did anything. So we couldn't work with it. It just was there, but it didn't do anything. So how can we change that? Well, we said the default value should just be an empty string, right? But we could never change it, because even if we enter something in there, nothing happens. So this one here, I can't even like open it. There's nothing happening with this unit converter input field. So this outline text, instead, what it should be is our input value. So it should hold this input value by remember. And then once we change the value, that's where we want something to happen once we enter something. And the thing is, you see grayed out here, it says it string. So what this onValue change will give us is this it value, which is of type string, which is basically the thing that will change once the value changed. So that means that whatever we enter in here will be this it. Okay. So what we can do is we can say input value should be, and not input unit, but input value should be it. So this it here, which is of type string, which is this grayed out thingy, you can barely see it probably. So now let's run our application real quick and we will see a little problem. Okay, so we added this outline text field input and it just doesn't work. And why does it not work? Why can I not click into it? And that is because we have our both selectors drop down menus here opened or expanded, and by doing so we're basically blocking the user interface. So we're blocking anything else. We can't do anything because these two things here are blocking everything. Do you recall how we can turn that off? Well, you can try to pause the video and come up with it. So little tip, it's going to be inside of the drop down menu. All right, I hope you tried it. So basically it's this expanded. So instead of true, we should set that to false for both of our drop down menus. So this one should also say false. Okay, so let's put those both into false and let's see if our user interface is now going to respond and whether we're going to be able to actually enter something into our outlined text field. All right, and there we are. So in my case, everything broke. I had to actually restart my entire PC for my device to, like my emulator, to do anything again. But you can see that now those items are not expanded anymore. So those drop downs, and our user interface is not blocked anymore. And we can actually change something. So we can enter hello world in here. Perfect. So finally we got it working again. So that's pretty much that's pretty much it. So now you can see we can actually change the state of our outline text field, and whatever the input value is automatically also reflected inside of our user interface. So that's not something that is done automatically. We had to implement it. All right. And now one last thing that I want to do in this video before we go over to the next one is I'm going to add another parameter to my outlined text field. So if you look at it, our outline text field has the value, comma, on value changed, and then we can add another comma after these curly brackets. And let me put that into a separate line so that it is actually visual as each of them being a separate item. And then here, and actually let me put the comma, leave the comma here and put that into the next line. So here is what I'm going to add in, that is a label. All right, so there's this label property that our outlined text field also has. It's an optional one. We didn't have to enter it, but you can see it's here. It's a label which expects or is of type composable. All right. So we need to add a composable as the label, which is inside of curly brackets. So we can now go ahead and add our own text as the label. And I'm going to say enter value should be the label that we see. All right. So let me rerun this. And by the way, I was also informed about turning on a live edits, and I'm going to do that later on in the course as well, so that this just happens faster what we have here. But we see that the label now tells us enter value. So this is basically letting us know what we need to do. So that's pretty much it for this video. In the next one, we're going to implement our other states. So all of those remember states for our other user interface items. So see you there.